Welcome back to A Wild Approach. In today's video, we are going to be discussing how to choose the plants for your garden this fall. Okay, so I know we're all excited about plant shopping this fall, at least I know I am, and anybody else who is ready to create a new garden space, you're probably excited too. But how do we decide what native plants to add to our gardens? What is the process? How do we create a plant list? I'm glad you asked, because in this video, that is what we are going to cover. Step number 1. What's your ecoregion? That's right. We need to know where your ecoregion is. What is it? Because that is going to inform step number 2, which is what keystone species plants are vital to your ecoregion. So how do you figure out what keystone species are important for your ecoregion? Well, that's pretty easy. You just need to go to the National Wildlife Federation website. But what's not as easy is they kind of bury the link on their website for some reason. I'm not really sure why. At least for me, when I go to the website, I always forget how to get to it. So I'm going to leave the link in the description below. I'm going to make it super easy for you. I'm going to leave you the exact link to figure out your ecoregion in the United States. This is a video geared toward people in the continental United States, so if you're outside of that, I apologize. But it may also have some Canada on there. I'm not quite fully certain. But either way, if you're outside of that, I apologize. But this video might not be as much for you in a specific sense. But in general, this is still a good to-do list. You know, number 1, finding out your ecoregion. No matter where you are in the world, what is your ecoregion? And you just need a different way to figure that out if you're in a different country. And number 2, again, what keystone species plants are optimal for your ecoregion? So in my ecoregion, the Eastern Temperate Forest ecoregion, and more specifically the Ridge and Valley within that, I actually have a whole list that I got from the National Wildlife Federation website. What are the top keystone trees, the top keystone shrubs, and the top keystone herbaceous perennial plants for my ecoregion. And the reason this is so important is because keystone species are exactly what it sounds like. They are species that are vital for the ecosystem as a whole, and they're so important for a large diversity of insect species. So they are literally the keystones, and you could even think of it as a backbone, you know, the spine, the skeletal structure of your garden, so to speak. So they are the number 1 most important thing to add to your garden. You want any number of keystone species in your garden that you can possibly put in there that will actually grow and thrive in your garden. And that's why we are also covering step number 3, which is what even is your garden like? Is it really dry? Is it really wet? Is it somewhere in between? So number 3 is figure out what kind of garden do you have and what are the moisture conditions and the light conditions. For example, my front garden is full sun. It gets way over 6 hours of sun a day. If your garden gets 6 hours or more of sun a day, it is a full sun garden. If it gets less than that, then there are different tiers of lighting conditions, and then we can go over that in this video really quick. Do you need a short, quick guide to get started in wildlife gardening? Well, turns out I've got just the thing. I just came out with a new free ebook just for you, and it's called A Wild Approach to Gardening 101, and it's available on my website today at macylou.com/shop. It's free, so go check it out. What do you have to lose? Okay, so what are the different lighting conditions that you could have in your garden? Alright, full sun, which is most of my front yard, not the whole thing, but most of my front yard, 6 hours of direct sun per day. Part shade and part sun are the tricky ones, and the ones that have tricked me and still kind of make me stumble when I pick plants. For instance, part shade is 3 to 6 hours of sun. Part sun is also 3 to 6 hours of sun, but here is the main difference. Part shade plants need protection from midday sun, while part sun plants don't necessarily need that protection from midday sun. This is something that really has confused me, and I kind of am just recently figuring out. For now, let's go to Dappled Light. Dappled Light is pretty self-explanatory. It doesn't really get a lot of hours and hours of like direct sun. It mostly just gets like direct sun in these little holes and gaps in the canopy of trees. So think of a forest that is not deep shade, but it's also not super open like a savanna. Full shade is obviously like full shade, but it's not so obvious because when you actually look at the details, it says less than 3 hours of direct sun per day. So I think whenever we get way down to like not even 2 hours of sun, not even an hour of sun, when we go lower than that, we're getting closer to what's known as deep shade. So what are the lighting conditions of your garden? The main issue for me has been moisture levels. And so that is where I go to the next part of this, which is moisture levels. What are the moisture levels in your garden? So this can be tricky, and you need to pay close attention to your garden for the whole year. I know that sounds extreme, but I'll give you an example. It's my own garden. I've noticed that, not only am I up on a hill, but it's very seasonal. The rain is very seasonal here, and it might be seasonal for you too. So you need to pay attention to your garden throughout the whole entire year. And for me personally, my garden is very moist in the winter, and it's very moist in the spring. Sometimes it's bordering on wet. Some parts of it are muddy and very, very wet and moist in the winter and spring. But when August comes, all hell breaks loose. And yes, I mean, it gets very hot and it gets very dry, and I am on a hill. Now, granted, it's not the most steep hill in the world, but it is still a hill, and it is still an upland kind of situation. So, my garden needs to have plants in it that can tolerate drought. I can have these little pockets of areas that I water a little bit more, but for the most part, I want most of my garden to be self-sufficient. So I want to be able to water them when they're brand new and when I'm getting them established, but once I've had them in the ground for like 6 months, a year, 2 years, as time goes on, I want to water less and less until I'm not watering those plants at all. On top of sunlight and moisture levels, you also need to think about what kind of soil you have. So, granted, I'm going to give you all this. I have not done a soil test. I know, really bad.
Smithers, are they booing me?
No, they're saying boo earns, boo earns.
I've been gardening for 5 years and I haven't done a soil test. Yes, I know. Bad and shame on me. But what's frustrating is it is what I call a patchwork quilt, where one area of my garden might have sand, another area might have more clay, and another area might be more loamy. And so it does get confusing because it feels like you take 2 steps and the soil's already different. Like, I'll dig a hole and it'll be orange clay, and then I'll dig another hole right next to it and it's more like loam, and I'm just confused. Like, what do I even have? I'll find out. They say to take soil from different areas of your garden and put it together, but I kind of want to do like a soil test from the front yard and a soil test for the side yard and a soil test for the backyard, and kind of just like have these 3 separate sections, because goodness, I mean, the soil just seems to vary so much here. Number 5 is utilize tools at your disposal that you have access to learn about all these plants that you're interested in that will actually grow in your garden. So once you figure out your light conditions, your soil conditions, your moisture levels, and you figure out your ecoregion and what keystone species are best for your area, next you need to learn a little bit more about these plants that are supposed to thrive in your area. So you'll want to go to websites like National Wildlife Federation, but also the North Carolina Extension Gardener Toolkit, I think it's called. I use that website so much and I still get the name of it wrong, I think, often. But this website is great if you live in the area that I live in. I live in East Tennessee. So North Carolina is a hop, skip, and a jump from me. It's right next door. And so that website is phenomenal and they give you so much information. So if you are in or near my ecoregion, highly recommend this website. They will tell you about the growing conditions that this plant prefers. They'll tell you what kind of soil, what kind of light, what kind of moisture levels. They'll tell you if it's drought tolerant, wet soil tolerant, deer resistant. I mean, come on, they give you so much detail. I think that this is my favorite website to go to when it comes to the actual detail for these plants. And after you look at these plants in detail on websites like this, you also want to double check that the plants that you're interested in and that you have found grow best in your ecoregion, you want to make sure that they're native to your actual area. Because you might find situations where you think something is native to your area because you found it in a chart on the National Wildlife Federation site, but then you realize, wait a minute, is this actually native to me? So to double check if something's native to you, go to the BONAP website. But the best way to do this is to actually go onto a search engine like Google and to put in the name of the plant. For instance, red columbine, Aquilegia canadensis. That's its scientific name. You want to take the scientific name, Aquilegia canadensis, and you want to put that into your search bar. And when you're on Google and you're in that search bar, after that name, you want to put the word BONAP, B-O-N-A-P. So there's going to be 3 words in your search bar and you're going to hit enter. And when you hit enter, one of the top links should be the BONAP website. You click that, you're going to see a page that shows you all of the things in the genus that they have on their site. And it's going to show you a map for each of these species. So find Aquilegia canadensis in this big list and click the map for it. And when you click that, you're going to see in green the native range. Again, the native range is going to be in green. And I know this sounds like a lot, but once you get into the habit and you just do this for every single plant you research, you will get into this mode and it will become second nature. You'll just do this with every plant that you research. And I promise it's worth the trouble. Because once you get in this routine, this is going to be the best way to make your list this fall to choose what native plants you want to add to your garden. And so you may be wondering, okay, so you've talked about keystone species and you've talked about all these other steps, but what if I want plants that aren't a keystone species? Well, that's good too. It's not a problem to add plants that are not keystone species. It's just we want to prioritize keystone species first. And we want to make sure we have at least a few keystone plants in our garden before we add other plants to our garden. So it's not all or nothing, it's have a little bit of both, keystones and non-keystones in our garden. But the main thing is this channel is about native plants. It's about creating habitat for wildlife. It is about creating a garden that is both beautiful and sustainable for you and the wildlife around you, and it is about trying to add as many native plants as you can in your landscape. So this is geared toward native plants, and it is a priority to do keystone native plants specifically, but that doesn't mean we want to leave out other important native plants that are vital to other species. You know, milkweed, that is a specialist species. So monarchs really rely on milkweed, but that is a, that is a species to species specific relationship. And keystones are more like a species to species specific relationship, but on a very diverse scale. So we're talking about a species that provides food for a huge number of Lepidoptera species. And the reason that we focus on Lepidoptera species is because caterpillars are the #1 food for baby birds. Baby birds can't just go to your bird feeders and eat your seeds. They need soft-bodied insects, and most of the time that means caterpillars. So that is how you need to make your list. Start with your ecoregion, and then look at the keystone species that go along with your ecoregion. and then figure out what kind of garden you have. What niche garden do you have? What growing conditions do you have? Because that's going to inform what plants you actually pick and you buy from these lists that you find online. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. I know that this video was just about making your list, so I'm sure a lot of you are itching to ask me something about how do you find those plants at nurseries? How do you find those plants for sale and where do you buy them? So if you have questions like that, leave them in the comments and I will try to help you figure that out. It's going to depend on where you live, so it can be tricky to find these places sometimes, but I know where I get things. So if you're in the Knoxville, Tennessee area or anywhere close to Knoxville, Tennessee, I'm going to have some great specific nurseries for you to visit. I'm going to have so many people for you to go and shop plants from. It's going to be awesome. So if you live near me in the Knoxville area or East Tennessee in general, you're going to have so many options. It might make you, it might shock you. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to buy plants from people who do not use neonicotinoids. If you don't know what neonicotinoids are, feel free to leave a comment and I can give you a link all about that in the comments below. Don't forget I'm going to leave a link to the National Wildlife Federation website all about Keystone species in the description, and I leave that in a lot of the descriptions of a lot of my videos. So if you need to find it, you should be able to find it, hopefully. I'm trying to help people find it because they make it kind of hard to find. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Brand new items are now available in the shop. Thanks so much to viewers like you for supporting the channel. To support the channel, like the video, comment, and subscribe. You can also support my work by buying art from me at macylu.com. Thanks for watching!